31. Genesis chapter 31. God is now beginning a conniver, and he has swindled people out of things and deceived people, and because God had told his mom that he would be the one that God would call and that his older brother would end up serving him, which is unheard of back in these days. And so, to fulfill God's word, Jacob and his mom took it upon themselves, and in so doing, a lot of conniving and lying and twisting and cheating and to get what he believed he deserved. And so God then led him to his mom's family, where he met at the time he didn't realize it, but he met his future father-in-law, who was better at conniving than Jacob. He was really good at conniving and doing things, and we're going to continue to see this. But it's been a number of years, and Jacob in chapter 30 went to his father-in-law and said, it's time for me to go. I need to take my family. He has 11 sons and one daughter. He has two wives, and I guess they're wives, his wife's maids. So he has four ladies and his wife, who have, between the four of them, they have given him 12 children, 11 sons, one daughter, and he has a large amount of herds and servants. And so he went to his father-in-law and said, it's time for me to go. And Laban, his father-in-law, told him, oh, please don't go. Since you've been here, I've seen the hand of God on you and on me. And since you've been here, yes, God has blessed you, but your blessing has spilled into me, and I've been blessed. And so I really would rather you not go. And so then Jacob struck a deal with him. Well, what would be the pay that you would ask of me that I should give? And so they came across the deal where Jacob said, well, listen, I will take all of the spotted and speckled sheep and goats, and you keep all the solid colored ones. And we talked about the fact that the streaked or speckled and spotted, those were unusual. Most sheep and goats were born solid. And so Laban thought, well, that's a sweet deal for me. I'll end up with more than Jacob. And then we read how, and Jacob, during this time, his father-in-law then moved his flock 3 days' journey away from Jacob. And Jacob still took care of his father-in-law's flock plus his own. So he would have to make trips back and forth, 3-day trips to go back and forth. But he did it. And put stripes in it and set it in front of the sheep and the goats, and the idea behind that is that caused them to mate more and to produce more. I don't know if it actually works or not, but as time progressed, there were a lot more streaked and speckled than there were solid, and so Jacob's herd was growing, and his father-in-law's herd, Laban's herd, was not growing as fast. And so Jacob, remember, his idea is he wants to go back home. He wants to leave here and go home. He asked his father-in-law, talked him into staying a little bit further, but now Jacob realizes it's absolutely time. Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired all of this wealth. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable towards him as before. And then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. Father, as we do open your word, it is our desire to grow in understanding and to see your hand and to learn to trust you and to take you at your word and to believe, Father, that whatever you have shared, you will bring to pass. You do not need us to fulfill your word. And so I pray that we will learn and grow as we go through these stories in your scriptures. In Jesus' name, amen. So a few reasons here why he decided it's absolutely time to go. His brother-in-laws believe that he's stealing from their dad. They even believe if it wasn't for dad, he didn't even have a goat or a lamb to begin with. So dad gave him some of the herd, and then now he's bigger and more than dad, and so he's stealing from dad, from the possessions of dad. Then he saw that his father-in-law did not look upon him favorably. Remember when Jacob was first introduced to Laban, he was all excited. He just thought this was a God sent, and God sent you, and absolutely marry my daughters for sure. I'll labor 7 days for your daughter. I should just give her to you. I mean, he was excited, and now he's realizing, yeah, Laban's not that impressed with me no more. He doesn't have that kind, appreciative, loving, caring, look towards me any longer. But the biggest reason he knows it's time to go is the Lord told him, Jacob, it's time to return to your land. It's time to go back to your fathers. Remember, Jacob has now established a personal relationship with God. God is speaking to Jacob a few different times, and he will continue to speak to Jacob. God spoke to Abraham, then God spoke to Isaac, and now God is speaking to Jacob as he is leading this family in the direction of becoming a mighty and a great nation. And there's another reason he gets confirmation. Look at verse 4. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field. Those are the two sisters, his two wives, to his flock. And he said to them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not favorable towards me as before. But the God of my father has been with me. And you know him to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckled shall be your wages, and then all the flocks bore speckled, and if he said thus, the streak shall be your wages, and then all the flocks bore streaked, so God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. So he calls his wives out in the field. He doesn't want to have a conversation around anybody else, lest there be somebody more loyal to Laban than to him. And so he calls his wives out to the field, and he said, I don't know if you guys noticed, but your dad doesn't seem to be real excited about me any longer. He doesn't seem to look upon me with favor anymore. And he levels with the girls. He says, listen, his wife, he says, you guys know I've worked hard for you. What? God never let him hurt me. So I'm assuming from reading this, you guys, that Laban was a hard guy. When we first were introduced to him, he was a good guy, a great guy. When the servant of Isaac came and got a wife for Isaac, he was like, yeah, and really, we had nothing good to learn about him. Even up until this chapter, we've had nothing but good read about Laban, but all of a sudden now we're reading, he's a hard guy. And he was really, really hard on Jacob. And Jacob realized it was the Lord. It's interesting. Jacob knows his past, you guys. He knows why he's there. He knows why he fled from his family. He remembers that, it's because I deceived my brother out of, the blessings of the inheritance of the family is why I had to flee. And he's settling down, and I really believe that God is really speaking to him. After his first encounter with the Lord, we've seen a great change in Jacob. He's not trying to be who he was. He's leaning upon the Lord. And, I see my brother-in-law is angry at me. I see my father-in-law angry at me. But you know what? Once the Lord told him it's time to go, then he decided, I need to talk to the wives. And This is a great this is a great sign to him. He says, listen, everybody knows that the streaked and the speckled are not common. And so if your dad says the streaked and the speckled are yours and they are the ones that increase, then everybody knows it's God, it's not me. I don't have the abilities to change or to create if they're speckled or spot or pure. I don't, so it's obvious that God did this with the livestock. So he says basically God has given your father's livestock to me. So he asked his wife's opinion. Look at verse 10. And it happened at that time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and, I'm sorry. First he tells him about a dream. I lifted my eyes and I saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked and speckled and gray spotted. And then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, here I am. And he said, lift your eyes now and see, all the rams which sleep on the flocks are streaked and speckled and gray spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel. That's where he first had his first communication with God. Remember the ladder and the angels going up and down. He says, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me, now arise, get out of this land, and return to the land of your family. So again, he just confirms, God tells him, I did this. Okay, I mean, I'm the one that produced and gave all of the unusual increase in the speckled and streaked. And so, God is letting him know that I did. So he shares this with his wives, and this is probably the biggest miracle, because look at verse 14. And then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. Do it. Man, if you can get one wife to agree with you, you've scored. If you get two wives to agree with you, you've really scored, okay? And so this is probably this was his final test. My brother-in-laws don't like me. My father-in-law don't like me. God has given me visions. Now I go to the wives. What do the wives have to say? And the wives say, absolutely. Dad has ripped us off for our dowry, spent all that we were supposed to receive. And so absolutely. And so, final and biggest confirmation that he got two wives to agree with him. I've been in situations like this. Years ago, Jeanette and I were looking to buy a house, and I don't know if you've ever gone looking for homes, but it's a very unless you have a lot of money, because then you can go and pick these really cool stuff. But if you don't have a lot of money, you got to look for houses that aren't real exciting to move into, okay? And that was Jeanette and I. And so we were looking for a house, and we just, house after house, and it's just like you walk in, it's just like, can't do this. And so we leave, and so I was outside working on the car, which I don't like to do. So I'm already, can't find a house, just looking at houses I don't want to move my family into. And now I'm working on a car, and I really know that I know that God says, you need to stop looking. Sounds good to me. I don't want to look anymore. I'll just stay here. Amen, Lord. Amen. But here's the deal. You tell Jeanette, okay? Because if I tell Jeanette, it's not going to be really good, okay? And so that was my deal. And I'm still working on, I was putting brakes on our car. And Jeanette comes walking out, and she goes, I've been thinking a lot, and I know we want to move, and I know she was pregnant with our third child, and we had a small little 900 square foot home, and I know we need to move, but I just say we just back off for now. Well, if you say so, dear. Okay, I mean, I really wanted to find a house here, but okay, we'll stop looking, dear. And as she walks away, yes, Lord. That was quick. But wouldn't you know it, the next day I come home from work and she goes, I know, I know, I know. We were not supposed to look for houses anymore. But our realtor found one I'd like for you to look at. And I looked at her like, I thought you said, and all right. And we went and we looked at it. And it, to be honest with you, it was the most disgusting house I'd ever seen. But it had 4 bedrooms, and it was in the exact neighborhood we wanted to be in. And I like to do handiwork. I like painting and repairs and all that stuff. And so as I walked into the house, I saw what it could be, not what it was. And so, all right, I can paint that. Yeah, I can do that. Sure, okay. And so it began to brighten up like this, and it's exactly where we want to be in the size of the house. And so that's the house we ended up buying. But I really needed the Lord to intervene, and I could just see Jacob at the same point. All right, Lord, brother's confirmation, father-in-law confirmation, dream confirmation. You got to talk to my wives now, Lord, all right? And he did. And they say, hey, whatever God has told you to do, let's do it. So sons and his wives on camels, and he carried away all of his livestock and all of his possessions which he had gained, his acquired livestock which he had gained in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her father's. And Jacob stole away, unknown to Laban the Syrian, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee, and so he fled with all that he had. He rose and crossed the river and headed towards the mountains of Gilead. He was afraid of Laban. Obviously, he had seen uh, the hard side of Laban, the trickery side, deceptive life, changing side of Laban. And so he just said, I don't, I already told him earlier that it's time for me to go. And he talked me into staying. And now I'm getting looked because I've stayed because my herds are increasing. And so, I don't want to deal with this guy. He's going to get mad. And for all I know, he'll say, fine, you can go, but my daughters stay and my grandsons and granddaughters stay. He was afraid of what he would face if he dared deal with Laban. So while Laban is gone, he gets his stuff together and he splits. And look at verse 22. He had a reason to be concerned with Laban. And Laban was told on the 3rd day that Jacob had fled. So Jacob had a 3-day head start on him. And then he took his brethren with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey. And he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. But God had come to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said to him, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. So Laban finds out that, and remember, Jacob has already told him, I want to go home. Okay, I don't want to stay here. This isn't my home. I want to go back to my family. And Laban knew that. And so when he finds out that he's gone, he gets all of his brethren, his sons and his family and all the guys together, and they go after him. And they're going hard after him to overtake him. He's got a 3-day journey. And it took him 7 days when he finally catches up to Jacob. So you can see that Jacob was justified in being concerned about his father-in-law. But he then, before he actually faces Jacob, the Lord warns him, be careful what you say to Jacob, all right? Now, remember, Laban does not have a relationship with God, okay? He's not, a follower of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So for God to speak to him had to have scared him. Took Jacob. Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mountains of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done, that you have stolen away unknown to me and carried away my daughters like captives taken with the sword? Why, why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I like that. I might have sent you away with joy and songs, with timbrel and harp, and you did not allow me to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, Be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. And now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Laban. Eh, typical guy. He has word from God that, don't mess with Jacob. All right. Don't be careful even what you say, not just what you do. Be careful how you talk to Jacob. So he now knows that he's fearful of Jacob's God, but he has to prove himself a man. So he tells him, "It is in my power to do you harm. But, your God talked to me last night, and so but he lets Jacob know, here's what I could do, but, your God, intervened, so I'm not going to do what I'm capable of doing. Um, You remember, this always brings to mind when Jesus was standing before Pilate, and Pilate was so frustrated because he kept asking Jesus questions, and Jesus wouldn't answer him. And in anger, he said, "Do you not talk to me? Do you not know that I have the authority and the power to crucify you or to let you live?" And Jesus turns to him and says, "You only have power that my Father gives you." And from that point on, Pilate tried to get Jesus freed. Okay, but at first he was mad at Jesus and scolded. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do?" "And no, you can only do something my Father will let you do." "Oh, this guy needs to go. Okay, we need to let this guy go. I don't want him no more." This is the same thing that Laban had faced. Um, but then he ends it with, "I understand you miss your family, and I could do you harm, but, I'm not going to because your God told me I can't. And, yeah, I know you miss the family, but why'd you take my gods?" And you realize, you know what, if your gods can be stolen, you need some new gods, okay? If you have to lock your gods up so that nobody can get to them, you need yourself some new gods. And so Jacob tells him why he fled in verse 31. And then Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force. With whomever you find your gods, do not let them live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and take it with you." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So, not knowing that Rachel had taken her dad's idols, he said, "Hey, you search. Whoever you found that took your gods, your idols, may they be put to death." He didn't know, it was Rachel. But you begin to see here that Jacob is understanding my wife and kids, and Laban just told him, "I could do you a lot of harm, but it was my God who told him no." And he's not listening to me. He's listening to my God. So I believe that Jacob's beginning to realize that you know what, I don't have to worry about defending myself. My God, absolutely capable of doing this. So he tells Laban, "Go ahead and look, see if you can find your lot. Find them." Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols, put them in the camel's saddle, and sat on them. And Laban searched all around the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of a woman is with me. And he searched, but he did not find the household idols. She was in her womanly condition, and so she was sitting on the idols basically. And hey, Dad, sorry I'd get up, but I'm in my womanly condition. Dad said, "Oh, that's okay, stay there." He didn't want her to get up, but so he left. But look at now that Jacob has realized that God is fighting for him, he unleashes 20 years of frustration on Laban. Look at verse 36. And then Jacob was angry and he rebuked Laban. He was afraid of Laban before, but now he knows, hey, wait. God's on my side. You know what? And so now he goes after his father-in-law. He rebukes Laban, and Jacob answered and he said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? Although you have searched all of my things, what part of your household things have you found? Set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young. I have not eaten the rams of your flock. That which was torn by the beast I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. In the day, the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes. Thus I have been in your house 20 years. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times, unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me. Surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. He's ready to fight now. It's like, you know what, Laban, you don't scare me no more. Okay, I now know that God is on my side. And he knows that the only reason Laban is not taking his family away from him and taking his herds away from him is God. And so these things are now beginning to settle into Jacob. Did he know of the God of Abraham and Isaac? Yes, he did. The God of Abraham and Isaac had told his mom that he would be the leader in the family, if you will, that the older would serve the younger. And so he was aware of the God of Abraham and Isaac, and then he met the God of Abraham and Isaac in Bethel for the first time. Anymore. I see that he's the one that is taking care of me. And so he unloads 20 years of frustration on Laban, and he rebukes Laban. And I don't think he said it with a soft voice. I believe he was upset, and I believe Laban was gritting his teeth because, like he said, I have the abilities to cause you be humiliated like that in front of his sons and his servants and his daughters and his grandkids and everybody else. So Laban, I believe his jaw was tight and clenched because he couldn't do anything. And I like how Jacob ended it, and he just says, and my God rebuked you last night. And that was there. So my God's on my side. And poor Laban lost his gods, and so and Jacob's God's talking to him, and Laban's going, I ain't got no gods to fight for me. I don't even know where they are, and so he's just gritting and grinding his teeth. He can't say anything, but you still see the pride in Laban. Look at verse 43. Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock. All that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to see my daughters or their children whom they have borne? Now therefore, come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. These are my daughters. These are my kids. These are my flocks. but there's nothing I can do about it, so let's make a deal here, all right? I have to let you go, so let's make a deal here, okay? Because there's nothing I can do about it, even though they're mine. And you just, pride's an ugly, humbling thing. And when I've talked to people who, so and so has a lot of pride, and I remember years ago counseling with a couple, a married couple, and the guy, he was very filled with pride, and he was pretty amazed with himself and thought himself above all guys, and his wife was extremely fortunate to have him. So as I was sharing, because I was a pastor, he was, you know, oh yeah, yeah, pastor, you're right, and he was agreeing with everything. I'll do this, I'll do that, and and his wife goes, he's just saying that because he's in front of you. Once we get out of here, he's going to be the same jerk he's always been, and he's just putting on a show for you. And I turned to her in the script in Colossians where it says that you can't fool God. And I said, so, you know, he can't fool God. He can fool you. He can fool this person. He can fool me, but he can't fool God. If he's lying right here, God will get him, and God did get him. But to see somebody humbled by the Lord is quite an experience. And here we see Laban having a hard time, but having to surrender and just say, okay, let's make us a deal here. So verse 45, so Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And then Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones, they made a heap, and they ate there on the heap. There we signed contracts. They would eat together. Nothing more, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Or pieces of the bread, and they'd all dip from the same bowl. So everybody's double dipping. So to dip in the same bowl with somebody would suggest that we're close and we have an agreement with one another. And so they called it Jagar Sehidahim, and Jake, which is heap of witness in Arabic, and Jacob called it Gilead, which is heap of witness in Hebrew. So they both gave it the same name, but different languages. It was the Arabic language was from Laban, and then the Hebrew language was from Jacob. But it means the same. It means the same thing. Verse 48, Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore, its name will be called Gilead. Also, Mespah, because he said, Mespah means watch. He said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent one from another. If you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God's witness be between you and me. So Laban left it, and he said, let's call this Mespah too, witness, because, I'm not going to ever see you again. If you mess with my daughters, and if you come against my daughters, then God is the witness. If you take other wives besides my daughters, so he's basically telling them that God will, be the witness between them. Jacob was fine with that. Yeah, absolutely. I have no intentions. I've got enough headaches with these four ladies. I don't need any more wives. I'm good with this. I don't, I can't imagine. Remember the struggle that Leah and Rebecca went through and the fighting back and forth. He's like, yeah, why would I bring on another lady in the midst of all of this? And so he was, he was fine with that. Verse 51, then Laban said to Jacob, here is the heap, and here is this pillar, which I have placed between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. The God of Abraham, um, the God of Abraham, and the God of Nahor, and the God of their fathers judged between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. And then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his brethren to eat bread. And they ate bread and stayed all night on the mountain. And early in the morning, Laban arose, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. And then Laban departed and returned to his place. So they've come to an agreement. Please understand that they couldn't cross that pile of rocks, that witness, to harm each other. If they wanted to visit each other, that's fine, but they couldn't cross it to harm each other. So it wasn't like they could never visit. I don't know that they ever did, but if they wanted to visit, that was fine. They could cross the pillars, but they couldn't cross the pillars to do each other any harm. Jacob's stability now, he realized. I believe Jacob now realizes, seeing what God has done, I personally believe that Jacob realized, I didn't have to deceive my dad. I didn't have to lie to my dad. I saw my father-in-law with his men come up to me and threaten me that he could do me a lot of harm, but God told him not to. And so he's now realizing, okay, I believe that Jacob in his heart is repenting of how he got the blessing from his father, and that he shouldn't have done it upon himself. God works in the midst. Folks, we all messed up. God has to work with all of our messes. Okay, it's we all create them, and He works in the midst of them. But I believe Jacob is now realizing, you know what? It's God who can do this. It's God who goes before us. So Jacob now prepares to go meet his family in chapter 32, and to help him, God again sends an angel. Look at verse 1 of 32. So Jacob went on his way, and the angel of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." And he called the name of the place Mahanaim, which means double camp. God's camp, my camp. It's a double camp. And I love when God, when you're about to do something scary or difficult, I love it when God goes before you. So he now has complete direction to go and meet his brother. Last time he heard his brother's voice, it was, when dad dies, you're dead. Okay, and so now I got to go meet this brother of mine whose birthright was sold to me and who I stole his blessings. And so scary thing what Jacob is about to face. But God sends an angel to him and tells him, that God is with him, and that God will go before him. And it's just like, Joshua, what a task to be with Moses for 40 years and watch all that God did in and through Moses, and to be a part of the children of Israel, on the Jordan. And Joshua was one of the 12 that originally went over and saw and came back and said, it's everything that God said, but there's giants in the land. And Joshua said, so what? He tried to tell the people, giants are no big deal against. Do you know how big our God is? Have you not seen him for these last few miracles that he's done? The dinner that you had this night, where did have you not seen the power? So he tried to tell the people, it doesn't matter. And so he saw all this, and now he's in charge of those same people. Okay, they've been wandering now for 40 years, and they're about to cross over, and he knows that he's going to be facing battles, and God sends an angel. I believe, personally, I believe it's Jesus who came to him. But Joshua 5:13, it says, and it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted his eyes, and he looked, and behold, a man stood opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or our adversary?" And he said, "No, but as commander of the army of the Lord I have now come." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" Then the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Take your sandal off your foot, for the place where you stand is holy." And Joshua did so. And the ground that you're standing on. And this is the same thing I believe that God does to Jacob here as he's now about to go and face his brother. But he's still, and I don't blame him. He's still afraid. So look, he sends some messengers. Verse 3. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, in the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "Speak thus to my lord." Notice he calls him Lord, Esau. "Thus your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find favor in your sight." So he's sending these messengers. They tell him, refer to him as Jacob's Lord, refer to me as his servants, and let him know I've got flocks and herds and servants. I got all kinds of stuff. In other words, I don't need this stuff. Okay, the promises of God and the family possessions, I don't need any of that. I'm good. I'm not coming to claim my rights of the blessings of our Father. I don't need anything from you. I'm just coming because I've been gone for 20 years and I want to see my family. And so that was his idea in doing this. And so the messengers go and meet up with Esau, and then they return to Jacob. Verse 6. Then the messengers return to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you." All right, with 400 men that are with him. And so Jacob was greatly afraid, distressed, and he divided the people that were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two companies. And he said, "If Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the other company which is left will escape." Not quite going the way he thought. I mean, why would Esau need 400 men to say, "Hey, bro, how you been?" If you've got 400 men, you're coming to do some damage. And he goes, but you know what? God said he'd go before me, so here's what we'll do. We'll divide up. We'll have two companies. Okay, the first group goes, and if Esau greets them and they all hug one another, then we'll join them. If Esau attacks the first group, the second group will run like crazy. Okay, so part of my possessions and not his family, his wife and kids were not part of the first group. They were a part of the second group. But if I lose servants and herds, at least only part of them. And so that was his plan. Let's see how this goes. And I don't blame him. That would be a frightening thing to hear, even though you have the promises of God. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. And look what Jacob does. He goes to God. Verse 9. And then Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you.'" So he's reminding God, you told me to go. You told me that it would be okay to return and all would go well with me. Verse 10, "I am not worthy of the least of all of the mercies and all of the truth which you have shown your servant. For I have crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become two companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me, and the mother with the children. For you said," and you know, sleepless night, really, really restless, and he goes to God and says, "God, come on. I'm here because you sent me, and And I'm not worthy to be saved. I'm not worthy to have what I have. I know me. I know me better than anybody. I know I don't deserve any of this, but you've done this. You are the one who have made me wealthy. You are the one who have blessed me. You are the one who told me to come home. I'm afraid that my brother is still mad. 20 years later, he's still mad. And please keep in mind, Esau has all the possessions of the family because there is no other brother there. And so, he's obviously still mad. And then before he closes in prayer, but remember, you told me to go and that everything would go well. And so he reminds God. And listen, if you're going through things and you really know that God has shared something with you and then something comes to challenge it, don't waver. Stand on what God has told you, and do it or say it or be it or whatever it is that he has said to you, do it because he cannot lie. He was faithful to his word, and let him know you remember what he said. You said this, and so that's why I'm here. You told me to come here, and that's why I'm here. I didn't pick this place. I didn't choose to, I wanted to, but you confirmed it. So he goes to God and he sends gifts. Then, well, maybe this will work. So look at verse 13. So he lodged there that same night, and he took what came to his hand as a present to Esau his brother, all of his possessions, you guys. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 foals. Then he delivered them to the hand of his servants. Every drove by itself. And he said to his servants, pass over before me and put some distance between successive droves. And he commanded the first one, saying, when Esau my brother meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong and where are you going? Whose are these in front of you? Then you shall say, they are your servant Jacob's. It is a present sent to my lord Esau. And behold, he also is behind us. And so he commanded the second, the third, and all who followed the drove, saying, in this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him, and also say, behold, your servant Jacob. Make sure you say your servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. And so the present went on over before him, but he himself lodged that night in the camp. So he sent a few different droves. Put some distance between you guys. Some of the herd and servants went, and when you meet Esau, and he goes, well, who are you? And what's this? Well, these are all gifts from your servant to give to his lord Esau. And then if he, lets you through and he gets to the next group, whose is this? These are for you from your servant Jacob, and so forth, until he goes through all of this. And again, perhaps he'll accept me. And so he's letting Esau know, I don't need your I just want to come home to my family. So this unfolds, and then Jacob goes to bed that night, and verse 22 is a very exciting few verses. And Jacob arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford to Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and the man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. So Jacob now finds himself alone, and if you ever truly want knowledge from God about yourself, not others, if you ever truly want knowledge about yourself from God, get alone with him. Okay, don't tell people, pray for me that I got to. No, get alone with God so it's just you and God. Okay, but you got to be ready to hear the truth because God can't lie. And he's not going to look on you and go, well, you know what? You're pretty creepy, but I'm going to be nice to you. No, God will be truthful. Lovingly, absolutely. But he will be truthful. And if you ever want to know truth about yourself, get alone with God and ask. And he will speak to you. And so Jacob is wrestling. I believe he's wrestling with the Lord. And the Lord's not prevailing. Please understand, it's not because Jacob was whooping the Lord or was equal with the Lord. It was because the Lord was to do was to cling now. I can't fight, I can't defend, I can't do anything. All I can do is cling to you. And that's where we have to be in our life, just simply and totally and completely clinging to God, not wrestling, fighting, or anything. Just all you can do is hold on. And the Lord said, let me go, for the day breaks. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And so he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Israel means governed by God. Jacob finally gets it, folks. He's now governed by God. He says, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. His prevailing was that he surrendered to God. Please don't misinterpret this where it says that because you have prevailed, it doesn't mean that he finally won. It means that he surrendered. He finally, all of his life, he's been wheeling and dealing and everything else, and he's not finally at a point of saying, I'm done. In fact, all Jacob can do now is cling to God. He can't run, he can't fight, he can't do anything but cling to God. Verse 29, then Jacob asked, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And he said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, which means face of God, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Just as he crossed over Peniel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. Because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, the muscle that shrank. Um, Jacob is returning after 20 years to his family, and he is a totally different man. In fact, when his wife see him in the morning, everybody knows he is an absolute different man. And so you guys aren't going to be able to find out how it goes with him and Esau until next week. So uh, I don't want to go into another chapter. It's already getting a little late. But listen, I challenge all of us to be in this position. And please recognize that God will allow us and take us to a place where we can't wrestle. We can't run. We can't flee. We can't do our own thing. And we can only trust in the Lord, which is where we're supposed to be every moment of our lives. We're always supposed to be trusting in God, surrendering to God. We were singing some songs tonight and just I surrender all, and it sounds cool, but again, I find myself except for that. Okay, and I'm sorry I took that back. I surrender it again, and thank God for His grace, and He keeps sharing with us. But Jacob is at a point to where he now obeys God, and he's a completely different man. When we come to Jesus, everything changes, you guys. Our opinions, our ideas, our purposes, our everything changes when we come to Christ. Some people don't like it. Some people think we'll snap out of it eventually. Jacob has now been open to the truth of God. Aware of God? Yes. Believed in God? Yes. Encounters of the God? Yes. But now that he's wrestled with God about his own life, he now is completely surrendered to God, where all of us prayerfully pursue in our lives. Father, thank you for this evening and bringing us together. Father, may we willingly get along with you and desire, Father, as painful as it may be, but may we desire the truth as far as what do you want to do in our lives? What do you want to touch? What do you want to remove? What do you want to change? Father, may we come to you and really seriously want to know about our lives, that we may learn the positive direction and purposes of God. Bless our fellowship this evening, Father, and bless and protect on our way home. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, God bless you guys, and thank you so much for coming.